The forest was quiet the night Ilara Voss found a dying man beneath the old pine trees. She was 18 years old, carrying a basket of herbs home from the river, when she heard a low groan carried on the wind. She almost walked past it, thinking it was an injured animal, but something in the sound made her stop. She pushed through the bushes and found him lying in the mud, his clothes soaked in blood, his skin turning gray. He was a big man, strong even in his weakness, with dark hair stuck to his forehead, and eyes that fluttered open just long enough to look at her before closing again. She did not know his name. She did not know he was a king. All she knew was that he was dying, and she could not walk away. Ilara knelt beside him and pressed her hands to the wound in his side. She felt the poison moving through his blood, something dark and unnatural, something no ordinary herb could cure. Her mother had died 3 years earlier, but before she passed, she had taught Ilara secrets that no one else in the village knew. Ilara was not entirely human. Her mother had carried old blood, blood that could heal in ways others feared, and now that same blood ran through Ilara's veins. She worked through the night. She mixed rare roots with her own strength, whispering words her mother had once whispered over her when she was sick as a child. The healing took everything she had. By the time the sun began to rise, the stranger's breathing had steadied, his skin had turned from gray back to a healthy color, and the wound had begun to close. Ilara collapsed beside him, exhausted, her hands trembling. When she woke a few hours later, he was gone. In his place, resting on a flat stone, was a heavy gold ring engraved with a wolf's head. She never saw his face clearly, not in the darkness, not through her exhaustion. She kept the ring in a small wooden box and told no one what had happened, afraid that using her mother's old remedies so openly would bring trouble to her door. She assumed she would never see the stranger again. Years passed. Ilara left her village, after rumors began to spread about a healer who worked miracles. She feared what would happen if the wrong people noticed her gift, so she moved to the capital city and took a new name, calling herself Lena. She worked quietly in the poorer districts, treating those who could not afford the royal physicians, using ordinary herbs during the day, and saving her true gift for the most desperate cases at night. She built a small, careful life. She told herself it was enough. Meanwhile, the man she had saved had become someone very different from the wounded traveler in the woods. Kael Draven was now the Alpha King of the Northlands, ruler of every pack from the mountains to the coast. He had earned his throne through years of hard battles and harder choices, and his name was spoken with respect in every corner of his kingdom. But there was one thing about him that troubled his people more than any war ever had. Kael had never found his fated mate. Among his kind, every Alpha was believed to have one true match, a bond that could be felt the moment their paths crossed. Kings before him had found their queens this way, and the people saw it as a sign of strength and balance. Kael had waited for years, believing his fated mate would arrive when the time was right. But no bond had ever come, and rumors began to spread that perhaps the bond had somehow failed him, or worse, that he was unworthy of one at all. His council pushed him constantly toward arranged marriages, warning him that a king without a mate seemed weak in the eyes of rival packs. Kael refused, though he could not explain why. Some quiet part of him remembered a night long ago, a night he could barely piece together. He remembered pain, darkness, and a woman's voice speaking softly beside him. He remembered a scent of wildflowers mixed with blood, and gentle hands that had somehow pulled him back from death. He had searched for her in secret for years, questioning healers across the land, but he never found her. Eventually, he told himself she must be dead, or perhaps she had never truly existed at all, only a dream born from fever and pain. The turning point came when a strange illness began spreading through the northern packs. It moved quickly, resisting every remedy the royal physicians tried. Villages fell ill one after another, and panic began to spread faster than the sickness itself. Desperate, Kael's advisors searched for any healer who might know an older, forgotten kind of medicine. That search led them, quietly and secretly, to a woman known only as Lena, who worked in the shadows of the city and was rumored to save patients that everyone else had given up on. Ilara did not want to go to the palace. She knew that stepping into that world meant stepping into danger, especially for someone like her. But when she learned that entire families were dying, including children, She could not refuse. She agreed to help, but only in secret, with her hood pulled low and her real name never spoken. She had almost finished treating the first group of sick villagers brought to a quiet chamber in the palace, when the king himself entered the room. He had been exposed to the illness while visiting one of the infected districts. Determined to show his people he was not afraid to stand beside them. Now he needed treatment as well, and his advisors, desperate and out of options, brought him straight to the hooded healer. Alara froze the moment he stepped through the door. She recognized his voice before she even saw his face, a voice that pulled something ancient and forgotten from deep inside her chest. When he came closer, she caught his scent, and though years had passed, some part of her body remembered him instantly. Kale felt it the moment he was near her. It struck him like lightning, a feeling he had almost stopped believing in. The bond he had waited for his entire life suddenly roared to life inside his chest, so strong it nearly brought him to his knees. And beneath the herbs and the healer's robes, he caught a scent that froze him in place. Wildflowers. Blood. The same scent from that night in the woods, the night he had almost forgotten, the night that had haunted him for years without an answer. He reached out and gently pulled back her hood before she could stop him. Their eyes met, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Kale felt the truth settle into his bones. This was her, the woman who had saved his life once, long ago, without ever knowing who he was. And more than that, she was his fated mate, the one he had spent years believing would never come. Alara panicked. She stepped back, shaking her head, whispering that it was a mistake, that she needed to leave. She knew what it meant for a hybrid woman like her to be recognized as the mate of the Alpha King. There were people in his court who believed old blood like hers was dangerous, even forbidden. If the truth about her heritage came out, it would not matter that she had once saved his life. It would only matter that she was different, and different was often treated as a threat. But Kale would not let her disappear again. He had spent too many years chasing a memory he could not hold on to. Now that she stood in front of him, real and breathing, he refused to lose her a second time. He asked his advisors to give them privacy, and when they were alone, he spoke to her gently, telling her about the night in the woods, about the ring he still carried, about the years he had spent wondering if he had imagined her. Slowly, carefully, Alara told him the truth. She told him about her mother, about the old blood that ran through her, and about the fear that had shaped her entire life. She told him she had been running from discovery for years, moving from place to place, hiding a part of herself just to stay safe. Kale listened without judgment. When she finished, he took her hand and told her that whatever she was, whatever blood ran through her, it did not change what he felt. The bond between them was real, and he intended to honor it. Word of the encounter spread quickly through the palace, as such things always do. Some among his people rejoiced, relieved that their king had finally found his mate, but others were furious. A group within his own council, led by those who believed strongly in maintaining pure bloodlines among the ruling packs, saw Alara's heritage as an unforgivable stain on the throne. They argued that a hybrid woman could never be queen, that her blood alone made her unfit and dangerous, regardless of any bond. They moved quickly, using old laws about bloodline purity to justify placing Alara under arrest before the mating bond could be formally recognized by the court. They argued that until the bond was proven and accepted through proper ceremony, she held no protection at all, and her hybrid nature made her a threat to the kingdom's stability. They scheduled a public council session, timing it carefully, hoping to have the matter settled before Kale could gather enough support to stop them. Alara was brought before the full court, standing small and alone in front of powerful men and women who had already decided her fate. Fear pressed heavily on her chest, but she refused to let it show on her face. She thought of her mother, who had lived and died proudly, despite everyone who feared what she was. She would not shame that memory by trembling now. Kale arrived just as the session began, his expression calm, but his eyes burning with quiet fury. He stood beside her, refusing the throne that had been prepared for him, choosing instead to stand at her side like an equal. The council members demanded proof, insisting that emotion and old stories were not enough to override laws that had protected the bloodline for generations. Kale turned to face them all, his voice steady and powerful. He reminded them that laws are made by people, and people can be wrong. He reminded them that his own grandmother, one of the most respected queens in their history, had once passed a law stating that a true and witnessed bond could never be denied, no matter the bloodline involved. Few remembered this law, buried as it was beneath years of changing politics. But Chaol had studied his family's history carefully during his search for his missing mate. He called for it to be read aloud, and though many in the room were unhappy, none could deny that the law still existed and still held power. He turned to Elara and, in front of the entire court, he formally claimed her as his fated mate, invoking the ancient law as his right. The moment the words left his mouth, something shifted in the air around them. The bond between them, already alive beneath the surface, blazed outward in a way that everyone in the room could feel and see, an unmistakable proof that no one could argue against. Even those who had opposed her fell silent, unable to deny what stood plainly in front of them. The council had no choice but to accept the bond as real and legitimate. Slowly, reluctantly, they lowered their heads in acknowledgement. Elara felt tears rise in her eyes, not from fear this time, but from a relief so deep it nearly overwhelmed her. In the days that followed, Chaol worked to dismantle the old laws that had nearly cost Elara her life. He argued passionately that a kingdom built on fear of difference could never truly be strong, and he used his own mate as living proof that old blood could bring healing rather than harm. Slowly, the purity statutes that had haunted families like Elara's for generations began to fall away, replaced by new laws that valued a person's character rather than the blood in their veins. Elara took her place beside Chaol, no longer hiding beneath a hood or a false name. She was introduced to the kingdom not as a threat, but as a healer who had saved countless lives, and eventually, as the queen chosen not by politics, but by fate itself. One quiet evening, long after the chaos of the council had settled, Chaol sat beside her in the palace gardens and finally told her something he had never shared before. He told her that for years, he had carried a vague memory of a woman's voice in the darkness, a memory so faint he had almost convinced himself it was only a dream. He told her that no matter how many years passed, some part of him had always been waiting for her, even before he understood who she was or what she meant to him. Elara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder as the evening light settled softly around them. She told him that she had never expected saving a stranger in the woods would lead her here, to this garden, to this life, to him. Chaol took her hand gently in his, and for the first time in many years, he felt completely at peace. They sat together as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, two people who had been connected long before either of them understood it, finally allowed to simply be together, without fear, without secrets, and without anything left to hide.